Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the final episode of Series 3 of the Sarah Jane Adventures, The Gift. Written by Rupert Late and is directed by Alice Troughton. Which is really strange because Rupert Late, this is actually his first story for the series. They got a brand new writer to write for the series for its finale. That's a very strange and ballsy move. Sarah Jane isn't worked up like Doctor Who. Like, each episode is its own individual story. They don't build it up like they did in most revived series of Doctor Who. So it's not that mad to think, but it's very strange in some way, shape, or form that not a regular or the showrunner like Chris Chibnall or Russell T Davies or Phil Ford writing for the series. They get a brand new writer. So that's props for ballsiness. This story sees the return of the Slovene, the family race which would appear throughout Doctor Who and Sarah Jane, as you of course know. But this story actually semi-introduces us to a new faction of the same species, another family known as the, I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, the Blatherine, that's right, the Blatherine. I say semi-introduced because the Blatherine family were actually introduced in a 9th Doctor novel, The Monsters Inside. That's really cool. So this actually makes their first live action appearance. However, it's not their first, or at least the name itself is referenced in a novel prior. So really cool continuity there. Even though in the novel, I believe they were described as grey, whilst here they're more orange colour. And so, Now, a lot of people really like this story, and it's a very popular story. There's a lot of stories in the Sarah Jane Adventures which a lot of people like, and this is one of them. And so, this also has the first prominent role, shall we say, for K9. After K9 basically became part of the crew again after, I believe it was Prison of the Judoon. Oh no, it wasn't. It was in. It was Mad Woman in the Attic. It reintroduced K9 back in the series. However, he has only had a very limited time role, but here he has a very prominent role as he gets to be a little bit more proactive in the series. Maybe it's because this is the first story that was written with K9 in mind. So that's some pretty cool stuff. But before we get into the story, we need to talk about the guest stars, because the Blatherine creatures that Sarah Jane interact with are played by two very well-known actors. The first one, the male one, is played by none other than Simon Cowell. Yes, Charles Dickens from The Unquiet Dead plays a Slovene in a Sarah Jane's adventure story. And the female one is none other than Miriam Margolis. Yeah, the mad woman from Harry Potter. And of course she's been in like tons of things, and she's always plays these really quirky, mad lady characters. She's in this. That's really cool. And he plays a Slovene. But for some reason the story never takes advantage of that they got such a big, both in terms of her being a big name in the business, and both, no offense to her, but she is a big person. She doesn't actually appear on screen. We only hear her voice as she voices one of the Blatherine's individuals. So there you go. Now, let's talk about all of that. So let's get into the story at hand. This episode starts off really interesting. And the idea is so interesting that I knew that it was kind of going to become not as interesting later on, because if you start off with this idea straight away off the bat, you're not going to leave much for a mystery and much of a threat. However, I really did wish that this kind of plotline stayed. Essentially, the Sarah Jane and team are chasing after a Slovene, a real green Slovene. These two kids from the Slovene race that basically have this plan to make this giant web on the Earth and then crush the Earth to make diamonds out of the carbon on the planet. I mean, it does make a lot of sense. It does make a really interesting. I wouldn't say a pre-credit sequence, but if the intro came in later, then that would be like the intro in it. But it is kind of the intro in it. So the Sarah Jane. Actually, no, it is, because the reveal of the Slovene being in it is, yeah, it is the pre-credit sequence. I do apologise. Where it's revealed that the Slovene is getting involved, and then they announce later on their plans to crush the Earth. And that is really cool and all. However, as somebody who is fascinated with science, and especially those in space, diamonds aren't actually that rare on other planets. It's just really rare on Earth. With some planets even being made out of diamonds. So, continuity error or scientific error? Who's to say? Maybe the Slovene knew that and they had other reasons why they wanted it. Maybe it was just purely out of revenge. And Sarah Jane is coming close, and they actually get K9 to help them with the investigation. And we have this countdown, and it's all building up, and it doesn't seem like anything's working. K9 doesn't seem to be working. They have no choice but to basically let them win, and we get the countdown, and it comes down to like 5, 4, 3, 2, and then all of a sudden these these orange, that's really embarrassing, forget I said that, these orange Slovenes suddenly appear out of nowhere through a teleporting system and evaporate the current Slovene with a teleporter that transplants to a what they describe as a prison for the Slovene, and they basically come and save the day. And they are really friendly Raxacolipan Phalabatorians. These are the ones which are the Blantherines, and they go by the names Leaf and Tree, which is just the shorter versions of their real names. So I'm just going to call them Leaf and Tree. And they come off as like really kind-hearted individuals, and they're like, we thank you. We've heard your reputation, even on our planet of Raxacolipan Phalabatorius, and they're like, we have no disrespect to you. You know, we know that you can save the day, but we are huge fans, so we would like to go to yours for dinner and offer exchanges in the hopes to strengthen an alliance, and you can become an ambassador for us, Sarah Jane. And the Slovene are like really nice and kind, and I love how Clyde, each of the characters have all of these different like ideas about it, with Clive being the most suspicious. Sarah Jane doesn't really know where she stands. Like, her instincts are all over the place. She wants to trust them, however, she doesn't know if she can. With Rani, just really fascinated by this, and is like really wants to push the idea of them being nice. And she keeps pointing out they're not Slovene, they're Baltharine. They are a different family altogether. And Luke, he's kind of like, yeah, it is important to share information. We can benefit from this. Not really thinking of any sort of dangers that can lurk in the shadows, which will come to bite them in the ass later on in the episode. It is sad that Tommy Knight, who does a fantastic job at Luke, and he keeps on improving every series, does come most of the time get the short end of the stick, as in this episode in this story he is incapacitated for the majority of the story. We'll get on to later as to why. But for like the first, more than half of the first episode is dedicated to the idea of Lee Slitheen being just generally kind and just seeing just like how Sarah Jane copes with a non-threat, a monster which is not actually a bad guy. This kind of is a shame because because it's a kid's show and you introduce this idea early on, you know what's going to happen and you know how it's going to play out. But that is just such a fun idea, and the first half of this episode, it's a slow burner. It's not like as engaging and as energetic as other episodes in the Sarah Jane Adventures where you got constant action and stuff. It's more slow beat. It's more like characters interacting with each other and discussing these issues and in this moral dilemma of, should we trust them? I mean, we've trusted aliens before when they've betrayed us, but these seem really generous and even give me this, the plant which could save the world, and Sarah Jane is completely bad. It's like, how can I know if I can trust them? And like all of her signals in her head are going off, but you know, she wants to trust them. She believes in the good in people. And that is just so fascinating. And yes, it is a slow burner. I can't imagine this being split with people, whether you like the first half or the second half. Personally, I really liked the first half. And then when the threat starts to engage into the plot line, then there is like, it does kind of change back to what we consider like a regular episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is good, but nonetheless, I feel like the idea that it was playing around may not have made the greatest television, and I can imagine a lot of people being put off by the idea. But however, for me personally, I really liked it, and I really wanted to see more of that. With less focus on plot and a narrative structure, and more of just characters debating and discussing and just seeing characters just having a nice time, just enjoying themselves with the Sarah Jane crew making Leaf and Tree food, and you get these really funny moments where they're just like obsessed with soup and shepherd's pie. Also, there's a joke in here where I believe it's Leaf says like, "Wait, you eat shepherds on this planet?" or something like that, and Sarah Jane is just like, "Oh no, that's just the name of the dish." Is that a reference to the Two Doctors? They make the exact same joke in the Two Doctors. Huh. In fact, speaking of references, they actually do mention Perivale at one point. So that's really cool. Perivale is the home city of Ace, if you weren't in the know of that. But anyway, so, and as well during this time we get this, we also learn that the school is got this test open up, and part of the main plot is that the day after they've got this massive test, which becomes an issue for Clive, as he hasn't revived and he doesn't really plan on reviving, but he has a smart idea. But before we get into that, I want to talk about something which I found a colossal disappointment in this series so far, and it's ever since the introduction of Rani's parents. If you see, Rani's father is the headmaster in the school that the kids go to, and we always get these moments where they're sort of knowing, like, they're near knowing where the aliens are real, but always seem to be like Scooby-Dooing the issue, and then like how characters hide it from Ronnie's parents. And though that is, fun and interesting, it can get really dull and irritating. So I was hoping with an episode that has a main focus in the school that, yes, this could finally be that kind of story. Ronnie's parents, especially her father, don't even make an appearance in this story. That seems colossally weird for a character who is the headmaster of the school, and they have an episode, because they rarely, surprisingly, have episodes centered in the school, and he's not in it. And in fact, it's like a really big, you can't hide this environment in this situation. It's pretty strange. But when Sarah Jane she's debating on whether they should give this plant to the governing officials, as this plant, as the Slovene suggests, can basically lead these seeds and keep growing, and it can basically stop famine on the planet of Earth, making salad for everyone. And she is debating about this. However, we quickly learn that the plant, the rankweed, actually isn't deadly, dangerous plant, which opens up to sunlight and spores come out, and if it lands in mud, it can grow again and make this horrible noise. Whilst if it gets inside a human being, it basically becomes a virus. And basically the sunlight opens right in front of Luke's face, and Luke, for the first time in the series, gets seriously ill. And Tommy Knight gives a fantastic performance where he's slowly throughout the episode getting more and more ill. But like I said, it decapacitates him. It means he's out of action for the rest of the story, which is a shame. It seems like if there's any characters being put out of action, it's either Sarah Jane in a handful of occasions, but mostly it's Luke. And that is a real shame. But because Luke is ill, and this is a very strange situation, because he was made by the Bane, he should never get ill. He's built to be the perfect human being. And Sarah Jane gets extremely worried. And this is Elizabeth Sladen, one of her best performances by far. She really shows the concern and fear of seeing her son being ill for the first time. She even, there's a great moment, which, this kind of blew me away. She kind of snaps at Ronnie at one point when, after everybody wakes up and Luke is, ill, and Ronnie, basically they're going to school, but Sarah Jane is I'll just call him, and then Ronnie's just shouldn't we take him to the hospital? And Sarah Jane kind of snaps, not really snaps at her, but does kind of get, I don't want to say angry, but she is kind of well, what should I do? Because you can't send him to the hospital because, he doesn't have a belly button, and they'll start asking weird questions, and if they find anything odd about his DNA or something. I can't take him to the hospital. And then Ronnie kind of leaves. Then understandably understands what Sarah Jane's coming. It's not in her mind. She leaves ready for school. Sarah Jane then quickly follows her and apologizes straight away. It's sorry for snapping out yet, but I am genuinely concerned. I don't know what to do. I've never seen Luke like this before. And she starts being really agitated, and Ronnie can see that, and that is just Rupert, late. You're not late. You're early to the point. That's fantastic writing and performance. And yes, that does mean that the bad guys, the Baltharine, are actually bad guys. We do get some scenes where they're discussing and they talk about how Earthlings, and they go back to mustache twirling villains, which the Slovene mostly are. It's again strange how the Slovene were originally a symbol of capitalism and just foolhardily in power, and we got the Baltharine, who aren't really Slovene, but they activate this plague for profit. And as they describe it, they're not really for money, they're for farming. They plan to farm this, still for money, but also for their own gains, as we later learn that they are also addicted to this rankweed. It is actual food on on other planets. However, these have been genetically altered to become a very dangerous form of the plant, where they breed and infect people far more quickly and dangerously than they would normally. And so it becomes a massive pandemic. However, back to Clive with his little struggle. He doesn't plan to do his lessons. So what he does is he sneaks K9 into class. Yes, it is completely dumbfounded how Sarah Jane doesn't realise that K9 is missing. And also, when it comes to Clive's point of view, you see him picking up K9. There's this great little moment where Mr. Smith is like, Clive, wait. And Clive's just like, oh no, I know you can't, you're going to bark orders at me because, I can't take K9. And then Mr. Smith is just like, actually, I was going to say thank you. He's doing my tits in. I love this kind of relationship between K9 and Mr. Smith. They have this this banter. They get on each other's nerves, and why wouldn't they? They're both very logical characters stuck in your bloody attic. It's hilarious. But from Clive's point of view, did he walk down the stairs with K9, took it across the road, all the way to his house, hid him there, took him into school, carried him into school without anybody finding him, locked him in a cupboard, then somehow got him to go into the class without anyone noticing? Yeah, that's kind of a big issue, isn't it? Well, it's a nitpick, but the logic of the nitpick is dumbfoundedly massive. That makes any sense? But yeah, at the second point, because the cliffhanger actually appears around here as the spores start becoming more and more, they get near the school, and Sarah Jane is looking after Luke, and she is just so full of concern, and she is really petrified as she's concerned that she'll lose the one thing she cares about, the one thing that ties her back to a normal life, her son. And then the plant opens up again, releasing more spores, threatening to harm Luke more and even Sarah Jane, and that's our cliffhanger. The resolution to that is that Mr. Smith opens an airlock or something and has this opens air vent, this fan, cooling system that sucks in all of the spores, which does really feel anticlimactic, but it does mean the second episode is mainly an action piece episode where the virus starts spreading, the school goes into haywire as the teachers start becoming really ill, panic throughout the planet, throughout London, and the heart of England. And Rani and Clive and K9 are trying to work in the school, trying to find out how to get out from the school, trying to do their best to try and get into contact with Sarah Jane and Luke, whilst Luke and Sarah Jane, Sarah Jane's just really taking care, trying her best, and she also basically wants to take her revenge on the Slovene. This episode should have really be called The Revenge of Sarah Jane. Although then, by that case, you'll have to add the trickster in it some way, shape or form. So, Sarah Jane tracks down the Bantharine in Antarctica, making this the second televised appearance of Antarctica with Sarah Jane, because she previously went there in the Seeds of Doom. I believe it's the Seeds of Doom or the Seeds of Death. I keep getting those two mixed up. The fourth Doctor one with the Crinoids. But as well, she's also appeared in Antarctica in the Big Finish Sarah Jane Smith audio series. So this makes it a sort of loose trilogy of Sarah Jane being in Antarctica. Not really, because this story only has a handful of scenes there where she threatens to kill the leaf and tree with vinegar, the main weakness of the Raxicolian Phalabatorians. And so they basically pretend that, oh no, we did mean honesty, we did mean kind, we just we didn't realise the dangerous effect it had on your planet. Please, we'll deactivate the plants now. We'll stop everything. Just put your gun down and we'll work this out. You know, it's just a massive misunderstanding. I love the plan of the Slovene. Let's just call them the Slovene. It's much easier. They basically show on the screen that the plants are being deactivated in some way, like Earth just suddenly cured of them. And then when they basically reveal to Slytherin, to Sarah Jane, that they are the bad guys, that they actually did this on purpose, do they reveal then that the screen, they basically had like a fake screen, and the plants were actually still spreading on Earth? They made an entire screen in case Sarah Jane came knocking on their door. That is hilarious. However, at this point in the story, I must admit, I was getting pretty bored. The stuff, even though it's slower, the more interesting stuff I found in the first half seems to completely have vanished as we go back to another adventure of Sarah Jane fighting evil Slovene or Slovene-like creatures. And we got this cliche plot, the virus epidemic, which is still fun and interesting, but compared to the first half, compared to the more slower burn and much more character-focused part of the episode, I felt like it was a massive letdown to basically try to resolute the story in this capacity and make it feel much more like it is a regular Sarah Jane episode. And it is kind of a shame, because I feel like this might be the weakest episode in series 3, despite the first half being one of the best, in my opinion. Rupert Late does a fantastic job here. I just feel like he falls under the traps of, well, we can't just have them be good guys, because where's the threat? Where's the plot? Where's the danger? Where's the setup? Where's the payoff? We have to have them as the bad guys. So it makes logical sense from a writer's standpoint. I just personally found it more interesting when we get this really strange sensation of just meeting nice monsters, and that being the focus of an episode for the change, with no real dilemma apart from our characters being really suspicious of the events. Like, I personally think would be far more interesting, even if it's just for me and less for the general viewing audience, if it turned out they were just good guys. That Sarah Jane becomes really paranoid, or maybe they do have the virus and stuff, and Sarah Jane goes up and thinks that they planned this all along, but they did generally have this misconception, but the virus stuff only happens like later on in episode 2. That's what I would have done, just so I can have like a big finale. In fact, I wouldn't even have the virus stuff if it was just me. I would just have the idea of Sarah Jane just being really uncomfortable with the idea that these aliens have no ill intent. Sorry. Have no ill intent, that she basically becomes paranoid in it. I think that would have been a much more interesting story there, but no, we have a much more action-packed. I'm saying action-packed as if it's a criticism. Does that make any sense to you people? I don't know. But the finale of the story is... I don't know if it's funny, stupid, both, neither. It's interesting, because it's actually the first story in which the Slovene don't get destroyed by vinegar in any way, shape or form. the Slovene come down to Sarah Jane's attic. We basically learn that there's this sound that the plants make which allows them to communicate with one another. Clive, Rani and K9 learned that making a loud enough noise like a school bell loud enough will actually disturb the connection between the plants and they will dissolve, they disintegrate. And so they destroy that. And Sarah Jane wants Mr. Smith to replicate that. He replicates it to all over the infected areas of London and England so that it destroys all the plants. And then Sarah Jane asks Mr. Smith, can he localize that sound in the attic? And he's like, sure, of course not. Of course, I'm a smart, genius computer. If I couldn't do that, what's the point of me? And so the Slovenes start teleporting in Sarah Jane's attic, and it's like, right, you followed our plans. We are actually the bad guys. We are coming just to slaughter you. The hunt has begun. And we also get the revelation that they are actually Slovene. They are Baltharines Slovene. They are the distant cousins of the main Slovene family, from the green ones that we're all familiar with. So they are Slovenes. So, but I couldn't spoil that for the story treats it as if it's a spoiler, but it's not really. It was kind of obvious that they were. I mean, it doesn't really matter because people just call them Slovene anyway, not realizing it's the name of the family, not the name of the race, which was a point of note in their first appearance in Doctor Who, Aliens of London and World War III. But that's beside the point. And Sarah Jane uses this noise and it hurts all of our main characters' ears, and the Slovene just start laughing. They're not affected by sounds. They don't have the sensitive ears like humans. It's their sense of smell which they use to hunt and is their main sense that they use for their hunting. But it turns out Sarah Jane wasn't actually planning on hurting their ears. It's to dissolve all the rankweed that they have been eating, because these Slovenes turn out to be addictive to the stuff. They're basically drug lords. It turns out this weed is a drug that when you get addicted to it, and these two Slovene become addicted to this plant. It is kind of the Sarah Jane episode dealing with drugs. It's not really. It's more of a plot point than Sarah Jane actually dealing with the topic of drugs. It's not political in the sense that it's talking about drug. It's not a PCA. If you know what I mean. I don't even know why I brought that up. It's just a part of the element. And what happens then is that the sound dissolves the food inside of them, building up the gas inside their bodies to the point where they explode. And as Clive put it, they farted themselves to death as they explode, and they have the green mucus on all of our main characters and all over the room. And Sarah Jane is basically learns that Clive was using K9 to basically try and cheat his test in school. After K9 basically lets the dog out. See what I did there? And we get this really lovely outro, because every series of Sarah Jane ends with this kind of monologue where she's talking and discussing her characters to talking about like her situation. I feel like this could actually be my favourite one so far. And she's basically just, you get lovely shots of all our characters like enjoying a picnic together. Oh, the we noise keyword Luke, by the way, and he's completely fine. That scene where Luke is recovering, he looks at Sarah Jane with just pure innocence, as if a dog or a cat hasn't seen his owner in a while and is just in pure bliss that they have returned. What brilliant acting from both Elizabeth Sladen and Tommy Knight. And Sarah Jane basically discusses this as like, I have become paranoid doing this, and I will see good life and good interactions with alien life, just not today. And so that's how the story ends, and that is The Gift. Overall, I feel like there are some really great ideas here. It's a lot of fun all the way through. The first half is a bit of a slow burner, but however, I actually like the slow burning moments. It's very different, very unique, and it puts you on edge as you don't really have a precedent for a story like this where our main characters just have to get used to the fact that the people they originally think are villains and seem very villainous are actually generally good guys. However, when it's revealed that they are actually bad guys, and there is this massive pandemic plot then going along, it might become a bit more adventurous, a bit more dynamic. However, because I found the first half so interesting, I personally thought the second half really let the story down, in my opinion. But anyway, that's The Gift. So join me next time for a K9 episode. I don't know anything about the plot, so go figure. So join me next time for, is it Fear Itself? Fear Itself. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da.